Welcome to the Character Driven Life and Leadership Podcast, where we train and coach leaders to grow, develop, and lead with character first as the foundation of leadership. Hi, I'm Coach Dane, professional gymnastics coach, teacher, mentor, Air Force veteran, speaker, author, and creator of the Tricycle Effect. At LMDC, the Leadership and Management Development and Character Academy, we believe that character is the foundation that drives everything. Your people skills, your technical skills, and ultimately, your influence. If you want to grow in leadership and life without wobbling off course, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and shape the kind of leadership that endures, grounded in character, balanced in action, and bold in impact. Join me and let's trike on. Good morning, Kurt. Welcome.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be with you, Dane. Look forward to these times.
Yeah, today is going to be a very interesting time together. I think more than almost any other topic, this whole idea of digital ID is just overwhelming, I think, and frankly, it's kind of sneaking up on people, so to speak, without us even really knowing that it's digital ID. I think people are thinking about this event or a date when something all of a sudden starts, but as we're going to discuss today, we've kind of been the frog in the pot warming up over the years, and maybe it's been even the last 20 or 30 or even 40 or 50 years, right?
No, it's unless you kind of look back on our childhood and where we're at now. I mean, the technology difference. I mean, we didn't have cell phones growing up, and look at the
Right.
cell phones now.
Oh yeah, just totally changed. What used to be taking up a whole building
Mm-hmm.
when back in the days of Admiral Hopper, major mainframes, that the actual concept of a bug came from, right? Admiral Hopper came in one morning and the mainframe was off and they found a big moth in there. And so that was the first time that had shorted a capacitor. And so the whole thing went down because of the moth. So literally it was a bug, so that's where the concept of bug came from. And I got to see her at one of my events from my squadron officer school. So it was very fun. Yeah, so we want to go ahead and start us out with prayer
Sure.
and maybe a
Sure.
scripture, and then we can get right into it.
Yeah. Let me get into Psalm 146, verse 3, and then I'll take it to 7. So Psalm 146, verse 3, do not put your trust in mortal men who cannot save. When their spirit departs, they return to the ground. On that very day, their plans come to nothing. So blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God and maker of heaven and earth, the sea and everything in them, the Lord who remains faithful forever. He upholds the cause of the oppressed and gives food to the hungry. And so that's those words are comforting in the sense that we have a tendency to put our faith in our political leaders, our president, our senators, that sort of thing, thinking that they'll solve our problems, when indeed David is talking, thousands of years ago, don't put your faith in mortal people.
Yeah.
And he was a king. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that he would say that, that you really need to trust the Lord because he will be faithful forever. So I can start with a prayer.
All right, let's go.
Father God, we just invite you here, and we just thank you
Yes.
for those words you've given us, and we thank you for the freedom that we have to have your word in front of us, and that we are in your word, hopefully each and every day, and to chew on it and to understand what you're trying to to tell us for our good. And you've always loved your people, and we've been made in your image, and help us to make you proud today and every day. Please give us the wisdom that comes from you instead of from the world. and help us to help and encourage others who don't see the light. We ask this in your son's name today. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's our big mission. That's the thing that I have the most passion and purpose for right now, I think, is to be able to help people wake up, right? So many things. I had to do another upgrade on my Mac this morning. So now we're into the version called Tahoe. But my iPad and my iPhone, all three of those got upgraded. And then you see changes when you come back in, right? Now we don't really know, and we never have really known all the changes that they're making. They say it's because of security, but we really don't know that. And maybe it is some of it security, but they're also adding other things too. And we don't know all the time what those things are. So there's a firmware to computing and there's a software, right? An operating system. And then on top of that lies the application. Like our Zoom meeting this morning is the application that lies on top of the Mac OS, on top of the Apple's Studio. I'm using a Studio this morning firmware. So they could update a firmware or have firmware that can be updated and then years later modify that to all of a sudden open up new abilities for that computer to be able to do things that it never was able to do before. And they may not have even known they were capable of being able to do when they first designed it, right, or built it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's make sure we've got some sound on here. And one of the things that they did the other day was actually change how you got into your sharing screen. You have to double click it now. So that's a Zoom thing, but Zoom's doing the same thing Microsoft and Apple and everybody else is trying to keep up with things, right? So can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so this is just an introductory kind of thing. We want to kind of have a logical guide today to this whole idea of what is digital ID, what's the threat, and what might be the roadmap to the surveillance that they are implementing right now to get us to that digital ID level. And then how do you stop it if you can, and how do we survive it, right? I mean, this whole idea of digital ID, AI, technocracy, meaning the big technocrats like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and others, as well as transhumanism, they are moving us all towards this thing of, hey, we are now bringing machine and man together. And already we're starting to see posts where people are complaining because they got laid off. And you saw layoffs this month from several organizations or even three-letter departments that belong to the government. And yesterday they had a stream of people coming out of one of them with all their stuff, and that was, I think, the actual reporters in the newsroom for the White House. But things are changing very quickly, and we want to be able to give people hope and help them understand how no matter what happens to us as human beings, we can still depend on the Lord. And that gives us the hope for which he has planted, the Holy Spirit in us, in our hearts. And then on top of that, be able to actually, through action, be able to exhibit the right kind of character that will allow us to be able to help others, either become awake or to become, more aware of how they can protect themselves and their families. So that's our main goal here. Our goal is not to, beat up on other people, but to rather to, take the scales off our eyes, if you will, so that we can see where this real digital ID is, what kinds of things are happening, and how we might be able to, offset it for ourselves. So with that, go ahead.
I was just going to comment on it. I think that, the selling points on surveillance is because the big item, we hear about Arctic frost out there where they basically have been, surveilling senators, and we hear about these things, and this whole idea, the selling point of migration, that we'll be able to determine who's legal and who's not legal in the country. And so the selling points sound good, and I think you're going to cover that, and what is behind the curtain on those selling points is what we'll try and uncover today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the whole idea of the movie, The Wizard of Oz, I just think it's so interesting that towards the end,
Mm,
Toto and all of
mm,
them are standing
mm,
behind this guy that's actually,
mm,
operating these little
mm.
mechanisms, which is
Yeah.
like a computer, and
Hmm.
and the dog pulls the curtains back, right? And it's just a man behind it all.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting, and let's set this as a caveat here to get started this morning, that no matter whether there's AI there or not, someone built the algorithms
Mm,
initially that went into it. And so
yes.
that means someone can actually manipulate the algorithms now,
Mm,
even once the AI is built. So we're seeing a lot of that, and people are speculating that that's happening. Google's now gone from a quote unquote search engine optimization to an artificial intelligence engine optimization. But still, they still have control of some of it, at least, to be able to manipulate the algorithms and bias whatever they want to do in terms of where they're going with that. So lots of interesting things that
hmm
that we've got to talk about, and maybe we're going to have maybe more maybe more than just one show on digital ID, because I'm thinking, hey, there's really three parts to this. How are the elites rolling this out? And because we're seeing so many different things out there, like the UN.
hmm
The plan for global digital ID is supported by the UN under the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, a lot of people may not realize that the Sustainable Development Goals actually are in all of our universities. I
mm,
actually had to teach in one of the classes, the students had to actually pick a sustainable goal and make that their focus for their particular project, right? So very interesting. But before we get into that, I want to go back and I want to share something that happened locally to us. Okay. And that was this right here, which let's see if I can blow this up a little bit. We'll zoom this up a little more. There we go. This is actually a letter that was written to a school system in our area about vaccination execution day. So they're saying
hmm
this is a reminder that tomorrow, October 15th, so this was yesterday, okay, is
mm,
vaccination exclusion day. If you have received communication from Nurse Britt indicating that your student is not in compliance with required vaccinations and have not submitted updated vaccination records, a completed waiver, or scheduled an appointment prior to tomorrow, your student will not be permitted to remain at school. In accordance with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services requirements, students who are not in compliance must either one, have their required vaccinations completed, right, and documented, or have a properly completed waiver submitted to the school. So that's interesting. If your student remains out of compliance, and I think it's interesting they're using the word compliance here, Kurt, and
hmm
attend school tomorrow, you will be contacted to pick them up. Please review the attached waiver if you plan to submit one. Located on step 4 of the student immunization record. If you have updated vaccination information that the school has not yet received, please contact Nurse Britt as soon as possible so records can be updated and your student remains in compliance. Thank you for your prompt attention to this important matter. And that was from the RN, Brittany Engel, Altoona School District. So very interesting that they are setting the standard now. Hey, if you're not vaccinated, you're out of the school. And I can tell you that in our gym, we have 12 to 15 school districts, over 250 kids a week. And what we're seeing right now is this huge influx of homeschoolers.
hmm
Parents are taking their kids out of school because of this kind of thing where they are being told this is how you're going to be compliant or else. So the question is, what does a parent do? And how do they deal with this, right? Even for substitute teachers,
mm.
and regular teachers, they're going to have to be compliant too, right?
Yep.
So how are we going to deal with that? What are your thoughts on that, Kurt? I mean, interesting that
Well,
they came right out and said you've got to be compliant, otherwise,
mm.
goodbye.
Yeah, a couple things on it. I'm wondering if this vaccination exclusion day is statewide. Yeah, I mean, it kind of appears to me statewide, although this is just one school in northern Wisconsin. The other point is that parents, I mean, sometimes you have both parents working, quite frankly. I
Yeah.
mean, are they going to be able to homeschool? No. So we're in this, between a rock and a hard place on with a lot of families,
Yeah.
how to handle this sort of thing. So the easy way out is just to go and get vaccinated. And that's part of this compliance, this willingly
Yep.
compliance thing that you and I are going to talk about today is happening because once you give an inch, they'll be able to take a mile. And that's the formula for this whole thing. It's very devious.
Yeah, devious is a good word. I think, going back to 911, and we had the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was
Mm.
actually written 3 years before 911, is what I'm reading out there right now on things that are becoming obvious, and they're exposing some of the paperwork and other things and
Mhm.
through FOIA requests. So that's interesting because pain is one thing that makes people move on a dime, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
also loss of freedoms or mental emotional kind of turmoil also moves people. But people want to be secure, and
Hmm.
they like where they're at, and we have free will, at least yet still in the United States. So that's an interesting part of what they're saying here is, hey, this has got to happen. So I showed it to one of my parents in the gym, and this is a parent that did not have their children vaccinated, or
Mm.
they did not get vaccinated because they work in a medical facility during the COVID.
Mm.
And they're like, hey, we're just not going to do it.
Hmm.
It wasn't even, she couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I mean, no
Yeah.
one has heard of this idea of this vaccination exclusion day.
Mm.
I think that's an interesting title, don't you?
Yeah, I'm scratching my head on that one.
Yeah. I mean, really, this is it right here. Is
Mm.
vaccination exclusion day. We're going to exclude you if you're not vaccinated. So I understand it, but it really says so much more, doesn't it?
Well, it gets into this cancellation process that we've seen, over the past few years. Is if indeed you don't agree with our directive, we're going to cancel you.
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah,
cancel you on social media. Just going to cancel you. You're not worth anything. You're just,
yeah,
and that goes it's just an affront to
right.
what we've been brought up to believe.
Sure. Yep, absolutely. Well, I want to play this little clip that I did of a number of sources. I use and full disclosure here, I sometimes will use ChatGPT or in this case Notebook LM to talk about digital ID. Now, this global enslavement threat that was actually
Mhm.
written by the AI, not me. But all of these different, and I think there are 10 of them, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yep, 10 sources here. I went into writing this overall view of what the sources were talking about. So no bias there from the AI at least. And then I was able to do an audio overview, a video overview, a mind map, different reports, and you can see we've got lots of things here on the right that help to sum that up. But I thought this actual audio was pretty good in terms of being able to understand more about what this whole idea of digital ID and compliance is really all about. So let's listen to this for a second and just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it okay.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really complex set of source materials. They all point towards, well, a pretty urgent warning about centralized technology and power.
That's right. And these sources, they're not really focused on the usual political divides, left versus right. It's more about the actual mechanisms of control they see emerging.
Exactly. So our job here, our mission for this deep dive, is to unpack the central claim these sources are making. And it's a big one.
It really is. The core idea is that a global digital ID system is being set up and that it's the key piece, the linchpin for what they describe as a worldwide surveillance and enforcement grid.
And they use extremely strong language, calling the potential outcome enslavement. Now, we need to be clear, we're analyzing why the sources use that kind of high-stakes language and how they claim this system would actually work.
Right. It's about understanding their argument. And the key takeaway they present right away is that this isn't partisan. The threat, as they see it, targets everyone's autonomy, regardless of who you are or what you believe.
Okay, so let's lay the groundwork. How do these sources define this digital ID? It's obviously more than just a digital driver's license in their view.
Oh, much more. They define it as the main tool, the primary objective for establishing total centralized control over basic human rights. We're talking fundamental liberties.
Like what specifically?
Well, they get very specific about the potential loss of free thought and free speech. The idea is if every single action, every transaction, every communication is recorded and assessed, well, that changes behavior.
It implies a kind of self-censorship driven by constant monitoring.
Yeah.
Okay, so who do the sources claim is pushing this? Who are the key players named?
They name some very, very influential people, mostly from the tech world. The list includes Larry Ellison from Oracle, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp from Palantir, Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman.
Wow, that's a list of heavy hitters. And I noticed in the material, the description of Larry Ellison is particularly pointed.
It is. Yeah, the sources repeatedly refer to him quite sharply as an 81-year-old ghoul. And they tie this description to his long-standing advocacy for a national digital ID, going all the way back to the period right after 9/11.
That's intense language.
Yeah.
Ghoul.
So interesting that they're actually talking about how far back this went, that he was already talking about digital ID, right? So let's dive in here a little bit deeper in terms of just understanding what that really means. I'll jump back over to my other slide here. So we talked about different people out there, but one of them they didn't mention in particular was Yuval Noah Harari from the World Economic Forum. Let's listen to what he had to say, because this blends right in with what the hosts were just saying on that podcast.
You need to convince everybody to believe in the same story. What really the engine of history is stories. And they don't even need to be true. Some of the most powerful stories in history were fictions.
Right.
But you need to get everybody, or at least a significant part of the population, to believe in the same story. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Science is not really, at least this is my view as a historian, science is not really about truth. It's about power. The real aim of science as a project, as an establishment, is not truth, it's power. Particular individuals, particular scientists may be very interested in the truth, personally. But as an institution, the real aim of science is power.
Those who own the data really own the future. We are reaching a point in human history that we have enough biological knowledge and we have enough computing power, and all you need in order to systematically hack millions of people is just the data. That to hack people means to know people better than they know themselves. Right. To somebody in San Francisco, in Beijing, knows you, knows more about you than you know about yourself, about your medical condition, about your mental weaknesses, things that you did 5 years ago, 20 years ago, you completely forgot about them, they know it.
Right.
This is something we never faced before. Not even the KGB could do it.
Right.
And we are already beginning to see the emergence of such total surveillance regimes in places like Xinjiang, in places like in my own home country in Israel. We have this big laboratory of surveillance called the occupied territories, where you have 2.5 million guinea pigs of how to completely survey and control a population with very few soldiers. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it's amazing how few soldiers you need to control millions of people if you have their data.
So it's amazing to think that he actually is talking about controlling people and, getting rid of their free will, etc. So that's
I know that
amazing.
Larry Ellison has promoted the idea of surveillance, and the essence of saying that people will be on their best behavior because they know they're being surveyed.
Right.
And police will be on their best behavior because they know that somebody is watching them. I mean, it is Big Brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Yuval Noah Harari is the one who said, hey, free will is over, right? Surveillance used to be above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. And there's lots and lots we can talk about with that. But how are they doing this and what are they doing it with? It's just amazing to think that people are going to be compliant, just like the vaccination letter, right? How are they going to be compliant? Well, you heard Larry Ellison and others have been planning this for a long time. Even the Patriot Act was planned 3 years before 9/11. Now, of course, some are going to say that's a conspiracy theory, which we know started with the CIA shortly after JFK's death. But bottom line is that people will use excuses. And just like you heard Yuval Noah Harari just say, the story does not need to be true. Right? So psyops, falsehood, we've talked about truth versus false, fact from fiction, information from misinformation, disinformation, and psyops. And oh my goodness, how does someone keep all this stuff straight, right? So one of the things I thought we would do is look at what the United Nations actually is all about with their sustainable development goals. Can you see the screen okay?
Yeah, very good.
All right. So there are 17 goals, interesting on its own. But in this particular instance, those 17 goals, we were required to be able to allow the students to pick one of these for their project, right? So they all sound good. No poverty, zero hunger. I mean, some of these are going to be like, okay, so you've got your goal, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages, quality education, gender equality, ensure availability and sustainability management of water and sanitation for all. Those are all good things. All of these, none of them in and of themselves is a problem in terms of, hey, we need sustainable development goals, right? The problem becomes when they all of a sudden now go back and take control of some of this, right? So it's just the narrative is global citizenship and equity and sustainability, largely good. But they could be framed narrowly or with bias if they wanted to be. So if UN-driven content subtly shifts morals, values, and national narratives in classrooms without transparency, that's a concern. And again, full disclosure, I'm using ChatGPT here to help interpret some of these things. But it's really interesting to think that he's talking about total populations of countries that they can control, even with a small number of military. They're still able to actually control these human beings, right? Or like what I like to call human becomings. So, it's what works in one culture, socioeconomic context may not in another. If UN guidelines become best practices and push countries to adopt uniform approaches, important local differences may be lost because they're just applying it across the board, right? But data surveillance and privacy is a big move for them, and dependence and funding influence also. And then there are power and accountability gaps. I mean, there's just so much to this. Beyond embedding those sustainability development goals, the UN is actively shaping many domains of child life, rights, education, online safety, humanitarian care, technology ethics, and youth voice. So one of the ways that they're trying to make us compliant is through vaccinations. But another way they're making us compliant is by slowly sifting this information into our education system and helping the children believe that this is the truth. And by parents sending them there into the public school system where they teach this, they're actually giving credence to it and telling their kids it's okay to believe it. Then we wonder why they go to college and we now all of a sudden can't figure out why they become different than when they were growing up, right?
So so important to look at history and and know that there was a seismic shift when they took prayer out of the public schools, and that was in our lifetime, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see when you go over to Europe, it now is just one big country. You can travel from Germany to France to Austria, all these countries without stopping at the borders. When back in 1975, my brother and I took a summer and just spent the summer in Europe. Every time we got on the train and didn't matter if it was 3 in the morning or what have you, that train would stop at the border and you would have military guards come in and check your passports. Now you can travel. And so there's a convenience in travel, but what's happened is that it has affected it has affected people's mindset. They think it's more convenient, but now they're under a different type of surveillance, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. They're under a different type of surveillance. So can you see the camera there, Kurt?
Yes.
So one of the things, so we talked about vaccinations. That's one way to be compliant. A much more subtle way is the sustainability development goals and other things the schools are in, bringing into the children's lives. But here's one that most people have never even heard about: flock safety. These cameras right here are going out everywhere. We were just over in Bemidji, Minnesota, and they have these in Bemidji as well. But they are totally sustained by themselves. They're self-sustaining. So they have a solar panel and this camera right here with no writing on it at all. It doesn't tell you it's flock safety or what it's for or anything else, but this actually monitors all of the traffic that's going by or people walking. And initially it was just license plates that went into a national database. So every time you drive by with your car, it's taking a snapshot of that license plate. But now I believe that the firmware in there, maybe it was all along, but that they actually can pick up the facial recognition of the driver and the passenger, maybe even the people in the back seat, because our cameras are so good these days, quality wise, they probably can figure that out pretty easily. So another very subtle way, because I even went to the street department in our town and I said, who put these out? They said, we don't know. Well, I could tell right away they were sheepish about it. And they said, we think you probably should go talk to the police. So I did. Police said, yep, it's flock safety. And we see these on the highways now. Even small little towns have one or two of these. So going in or out, and they're all in the guise of safety and security, right? So this surveillance piece, we never voted on it. I don't remember us ever having anything coming up for vote. Probably there was something in the newspaper one night, one moment in time where you could go and argue against this at the city council or something. But oh my goodness, this is another one of those ways that digital collar is just becoming tighter.
The other thing that I think about too is let's say they're taking a video of you driving, through a stoplight, through a red light. What is to prevent? So there's a video out there, a digital video. So what's going to stop them from manipulating that video with something that it didn't happen? You know what I'm saying?
Trump up a charge, yeah.
Exactly. Because of the video, they're able to change it, I guess is my wording. Without the video, they wouldn't be able to do that.
That's right.
So is the video true or is it untrue? And that's the dilemma that we're in right now, is that the people, when they see it on the TV and they see a video, it's like, oh my gosh, that must have happened.
Yep, that's right. Well,
But
just look at the Charlie Kirk assassination, right? I mean, there's all this debate about whether it was true or not, holographic or, and it looks like people had like 5 different people that could have shot him, right? And they're saying, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy. It's like the old cartoons, he's everywhere, he's everywhere. Oh my goodness. But that's part of the challenge, right?
Yeah, that's the challenge. Yep.
So flock safety is just another one of those things. Well, those are on our local basis, right? The schools and our streets and our own hometowns, where they're slowly but surely warming us up to the pot. We don't ask any questions about something that shows up on the street because we trust the local government as well as the state and the federal to take care of us, right? Or that they're supposed to be looking out for our best interest and our goodwill, right? So let's take a look at what happens when we move to a social media. So Pavel Durov said, we're running out of time to save the free internet. Now, before I get into this too far, I just want to go back and reiterate what I did with ARPANET in the days of the 1980s. 1987, we put in the first ARPANET in Europe across Greece, Spain, Italy, and Germany, and a couple of other countries. But my people put in the first email in all of Europe at that time. And we were shooting Zenith's laptops across Motorola's mobile phones. There was no ability to tell who was who. If I sent an email, it was like a 15-letter email address. There were no domains then, like at Microsoft.com. We don't have domains in those days, right? So the ability for people to spy on you was very minimal, and you were anonymous then. So you could go throughout the internet and no one would bother you or be able to track you, or at least not as easily as they can today, right? Because we have digital footprints with our phones and our computers and everything else. Even logging into your bank account. If you say, I want you to remember this device for 30 days, it remembers it. It puts a cookie or something on your machine that then when you go into the account tomorrow or the next day or whenever you enter it next, it's going to remember, oh, yep, this machine was here before, and you don't have to actually go through that extra step. So they have a lot of detail in the applications to make it convenient for us. But what happens when it goes beyond convenience and security? And that's what Pavel said. And I think he was arrested a while back in Italy, I think, or maybe it was France. But the internet's days are numbered. Dystopian governments will push all resistance underground, signaling the end of free speech. What will be left is slop content and fake videos generated by AI. Just what you just got done saying, right, Kurt?
Exactly.
So who will be left online? Mostly brain-numbered snowflakes who live in a perpetual simulacrum. I've never heard that word before, but I think it means that it's going to be in a controlled environment, who can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. This is the race to the bottom for humanity. That was Patrick Wood, who is the editor for this. So it's interesting because EU lawmakers have sought to introduce chat control. While the UK and Australia are on track for digital ID systems, Pavel warns that these dystopian measures must be stopped. Messaging, he is the founder of Telegram, by the way. And a lot of people were using Telegram because they felt it was more secure. And most likely it was. And he warns that a dark dystopian world is approaching with governments worldwide rolling back privacy protections. That's his main concern, right? He said, I'm 41, I'm turning 41, but I don't feel like celebrating. Our generation is running out of time to save the free internet built for us by our fathers. So all the way back to Admiral Hopper, Grace Hopper. And when we rolled out the ARPANET in Turkey in the 80s to today, you know, we've had this opportunity to move about the internet freely, right? And for the most part, we weren't tracked. Now, in the last couple of years, we've been being tracked, and more, it's becoming dystopian measures that they're using in order to be able to control us, contain us, and ultimately make us compliant. So, and we're so used to the internet now, who would want to give it up, right, Kurt?
You know, I remember when the internet came into being, and we thought, what a great tool, and it is exactly a great tool. It's just that right now, people who are in control understand that they control the population, not with bullets and with guns so much as with the internet, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids, they use PayPal to pay. They'll take a picture of a check, you know, we'll write a check for them. They'll take a picture of it and it's deposited, you know, into their account immediately. And so it's an instant gratification. The other thing is that, you know, it's all being tracked as you're talking about. It's all being tracked.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pavel is really concerned about that, and he was arrested. My understanding is that he gave in to some requirement that they were making of him so they could actually do something in terms of surveilling his Telegram behind the scenes, but maybe that's not true either. It's hard to know what's fact and fiction, what's true and what's false. So we have to peel that out and really understand it better in terms of understanding where we're going with all that. So bringing this a little closer to home, I think it's interesting. We talked about dystopian things from Pavel, right? But this is a Z Media video, and I'm not going to play it, but it says, warning, Texas passes dystopian UK-style online ID law, right? And this probably hits home for you, doesn't it?
Yes. We just, we lived in Texas for over 35 years.
So now that you're back in Wisconsin, it's like, yeah, this is still home, and it probably is one of those places where they're actually testing this out to see how far it will go. So folks that are out there listening to us, I just want to encourage you, reach out to Kurt or I and help us, help you by giving you some of these locations that you can actually learn from in terms of how do we protect ourselves with digital ID and so forth, right? So, so I want to show people, and at least I'll tell them because it's a podcast, but I also have this in video, a little bit more about how can you actually save these things, because the information is so overwhelming, even for me. But recently, and it only applies on the desktop version of X. Here I am on Twitter, right? I use Twitter and Telegram and a couple of other Truth Social and Gab to be able to pull and or post on. One of the things, and LinkedIn as well. So one of the things that I did not know until recently, and maybe it's been there all along, is that you can have bookmarks in your X, but you can also file them in their own folders. So this one on digital ID, I've collected several different digital ID posts from different people. This one, it's not so much who it came from, but the topic is a Glenn Beck and Whitney Webb interview where she exposes climate movement's shocking truth. Groups like Just Stop the Oil are funded by oil dynasties like Rockefeller or Getty. They've shifted the focus from real pollution to CO2. Does that remind you of anything, Kurt? CO2? That's what I've been fighting in my home, trying to reduce CO2, right? Because if it gets over a certain level, you start getting dizzy and all this kind of thing. But they're making us the villain and not the corporate or military polluters, right? So another one is here, and I'll play this one. This is a very short one, but unelected, not a doctor, psychopath, eugenicist, and brags about genocide is Bill Gates. And he's saying we need a digital certificate to authenticate those who have been vaccinated. It's exciting. Pfizer broke every record, 10 billion vaccine doses for the world. Although we now see Ron Johnson, Senator Johnson, and others outing the VAERS, where they had manipulated the VAERS, which is the vaccination injuries and or deaths and database to be able to calculate how many people were impacted by the vaccines and so forth, right? But here's what Bill Gates says. Let me rewind this here. You hear that okay?
Not yet.
Okay, let me go back and share this screen again. There we go. Whoop, hang on just one more second. Yeah, there we go. So I'll play this and I'll turn up the sound a little bit more here so we can get as much sound as possible. Perfect.
Interest in taking the vaccine where we can coordinate things. And of course, we need some sort of digital certificate because we're likely to say to people working in nursing homes or hospitals or maybe even schools that they need to authenticate that they've been vaccinated, and even travel will have some of that. So it's exciting that Pfizer did a great job, broke every record. But now this distribution challenge, including getting for the world, over 10 billion doses, it's very daunting.
What were you? So interesting that if you go back to Altoona, she talked about, I think in that letter, your vaccination record, right? Now what he's talking about is we need a digital certificate that will actually authenticate you and tie all of that together, right? And so I think the idea here is to help the audience understand that this is a slow warming up process that's been in effect for a lot of years. And we're just now seeing some of this come up, and that the pot is starting to boil now. It's not just simmering or, just heating up, but it's actually starting to boil. And the bad guys know it out there. The ones who are wanting control, they know that their time is short unless they get us to be compliant soon. So very interesting. Here's another one that can't force you to have digital ID. Go ahead, Kurt.
I was just going to say real briefly that that in order for me to work over in West Africa for 15 years, I had to show my vaccination card every time I'd arrive in Nigeria or Angola, that I had yellow fever, I had typhoid, I had, hepatitis A through Z shots. And so it's not a huge leap of faith to get into a digital card, if you will, instead of having a paper card to show immigration when you arrive in a international location. Now it's digitized, so
Right.
it's not a huge thing for people to take that leap.
Right. And I think it's interesting you called it a leap, because it isn't a huge leap now. But yeah, so this, tying right into that idea that it's not a huge leap, they can't force you to have a digital ID, this guy's saying, but here's the catch. They don't need to force you. They just need you to make life impossible without it. So although there might be no law saying that you just can't work without it, eat without it, bank without it, travel without it, and so on and so forth. You're forced by exclusion. Have you heard that word recently?
Yeah, locally here,
Yeah,
little school district up here.
exactly. Vaccination exclusion. So you do still need to have access to land, independent water, energy, and food production, and a like-minded community. With these 5 things in place, you can resist the mainstream agenda on principle and in practice. Now, you and I, in the town that you're the closest city that you're from, recently the city council put on a vote for whether they were going to retain fluoride in their city water, right? You want to explain to the audience how that worked, Kurt?
Well, it goes back to 1964 when my father, who was a dentist at that time in our town, advocated. I remember being in third grade at the time, but advocated fluoride to harden the enamel in teeth because there's so many cavities, carie issues in small children at that time, and so it all seemed like a good deal. Well, fast forward, 50 years later, people are going, "Hey, wait a minute. Do we really need to be drinking this stuff?" And how about people that don't want to drink chlorine or fluorine in their drinking water? And so it was brought up for a referendum, and the population voted to get rid of it. But the city council nixed that and said, "Hey, we still think it's needed, and therefore, regardless of what the general population is saying in the community, we're going to go ahead and keep it in the water." So there you have it.
So a small minor number of people who are supposedly, allegedly representing the people that in their districts, right, for that city, decided to overturn the vote of the people,
Yes.
decided to overturn the voice of the people, decided to overturn the will of the people. And there you have it, that kind of thing. A small group of people. It doesn't take, just like you've all said, a small military to control a large population. So if
Mhm.
we've got these small councils, even at the local level, that are going against the will of the people that they are supposed to be representing, then again, we have this warming up in the pot kind of thing. Used to be, hey, we would have gone with it. They might not have liked it, but now the pot's starting to boil and they just turn it right around and say, we don't care what you voted for. We're going to keep it anyway. So very interesting. So here's another one. This looks to me like the beginning of stages. So I'm going to go ahead and play this one. Very interesting, because this is a store in London. Now, this store in London is actually, I think, an Aldi's, and all of us have probably been to Aldi's here in the United States. You can go in the door, shop around, then you go to the checkout counter, right? Well, let's take a look at how they actually operate the Aldi's in
You're in
UK.
London, you're on a business trip, you're staying in Greenwich, and you want to buy some food. So you go into the local Aldi's, like this one, and you think, I'm going to go in here and buy some food so that I can feed myself. And then you approach the barrier, and look, you can't even get in the shop without having a QR code to scan here, or to scan here, and then you can go and buy things. Now this looks to me like the beginning stages of the digital prison that we keep talking about. You're in London.
So interesting, huh? If people don't resist, eventually all the stores will require a valid digital ID to enter. We see that in Walmart right now. We see it in lots of other places. So it shouldn't come as too much of a shock for us, right? So this one is probably the last of these short ones that I'll show here. And then I've got a couple of other ones I want to share too. But this is a WEF whistleblower. And most recently, we're seeing more and more people whistleblowing, right? They're coming out of different agencies in the United States government. They're coming from different hospitals, different medical areas, and they're whistleblowing. And so this WF whistleblower exposes how CBDCs will eventually be held on microchips implanted under the skin, and universal basic income will be used to entice people into accepting this. So that's the question. If we all awake and we're not going to be compliant by free will, how are they going to force us to do this? Universal basic income is what he is suggesting will be that enticement.
They have literally delayed their agenda because I think it's so important to them. They've been very careful about the timing, and let's wait a little longer, let's wait a little longer, let's have this crisis first, let's have COVID first, soften them up. But they've delayed because the technology was already ready around 2015 to roll out. And what people don't mention is, what do these CBDCs actually look like? At the moment, there's a bit of talk about this being phone-based apps. And yes, that is the initial phase. But what was already ready around 2015 is the ultimate goal. What they really want, apparently, I was told by a central banker, is, CBDCs looks like a small grain of rice that they want to put under your skin, which is, in my view, a violation of human dignity. And they realize there is a hurdle. So to get people to accept this, there will be, why suddenly are the billionaires saying, let's have universal basic income? Because the story is going to be, now we've created this vast unemployment and disruption and crises. Well, we need universal basic income. You will get 2,000 euros into your account every month. But of course, to run this efficiently, we need to use the latest technology. So, you need the CBDC chip implant. But how many people will say, okay, fine, 2,000 pounds, 2,000 euros,
A surprising proportion.
Yeah, so what do you think about that, Kurt? I mean, again, this is not normally just warming up, right? But it's actually boiling in the pot now.
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle for Americans would be acceptance to a universal basic income. I think the only way that would happen is to have the depression that you saw in the 1930s, where you have the whole monetary system fold up, and that I just can't see people. I would think that would be the biggest problem in accepting the digital ID would be the universal basic income. I mean, people are going to hang on to what they have. My grandfather, when he passed away back in the 50s, wrote a will, so my mom and my uncle dug a hole in the backyard where he lived and found a few mason jars, with $13,000 in the mason jars. And so people are going to be hiding gold, silver coins, or what have you, based on the threat of this universal basic income. So I think our monetary system has to fold in order for people to accept it. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, some really good points there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me share this next one, because I think some people will say, oh, we don't really have too many problems with the actual fact that we're going to get chipped. But watch this. And I taught this in my classes at the university. It's very interesting.
We came across this and saw it being used in other societies. We said, why not us?
Why not us? That's the attitude here at 3 Square Market in River Falls. The software engineering company has taken the tech world by storm by offering to microchip employees.
An opportunity that we saw to really provide something to society.
President and CEO Patrick McMullen has been working on this project since January. Employees aren't required to get the chip. It's completely voluntary.
It's a big needle, though.
I've been pierced with bigger.
The company offered me the opportunity to get chipped, and I agreed.
One more big deep breath in, and exhale. Not too bad, huh?
Not too bad. Yeah, just a pinch. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty easy.
Okay.
Convenience, in a lot of ways, convenience. Really eliminating what I have to carry in my pockets.
Employee Tony Dana says the chip will be used for basic tasks like getting in and out of the building, logging onto his computer, and buying snacks in the break room.
And then to finalize your payment, you'll put your RFID chip, hold it against it. Now my unique card that's identified with the RFID chip, it's asking if I'd like to put the $6 on my chip. So yes.
Since word got out about the chips, 3 Square has been contacted by hospitals, universities, even the U.S. and foreign governments about the technology.
Imagine being able to travel without a passport or worry about losing it. You just hold your hand up and all the documentation comes up.
The company says this particular chip is not capable of GPS, but they admit that could be in the future. In River Falls, Tim Elliott, WISN 12.
So the interesting part is that's River Falls, Wisconsin, which is only about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half from us here, right? And so this was 8 years ago, this particular video, that was a story with WISN. And 5 years before that, Sweden was already microchipping their people. So this is almost probably more than 15-year-old technology, right? When I came home from the military from Turkey, after running ARPANET and all of the things that we did that were 30 years ahead of technology just recently in the last 5 to 10 years here, one of the companies in the United States was called digitalangel.com in Florida. So in 1989 and 1990, digitalangel.com was using RFID chips exactly the size that we saw in that video back in 1989 and 1990. This was 8 years ago here, so we're talking about what? Instead of it being 2025, it would have been 2017 or 18 maybe. And Sweden was 5 years before that, 2012. Well, I was 20 years before that, right, in 1990 to 92, somewhere in there. You can't find digitalangel.com on anywhere out there now, but this technology has been planned. It's already been rolled out. They were rolling it out in Florida for children to be able to track children at that time. So very interesting. It's not something that, again, has evolved overnight. It's been this slow warming up in the pot and all of a sudden boiling kind of thing, right? So.
Yeah, when you heard, people's reason for doing that, it was all about convenience, convenience, convenience.
Yeah, absolutely it was. Yep. Yeah, and that's going to be the thing I think that we've got to really press against is, okay, if we're going to have this identity card, what happens if we don't get it? Yesterday, we bought something for cooking in the kitchen, and the UPS package came upside down. So no big deal. I just turned it over where the label's on the right side, right? And I opened up the lid, but the actual box inside was upside down. Inside that box, right? And at the top it said, danger, cancer to women and, the public or something like that. And I was like, what is this all about? They didn't say this when I bought this off of Amazon. What's the deal with that? So I went back and I chat GPT'd it, and it has something to do with the California laws. They have to put that on there because of California laws, because California is much more strict in terms of PFAS and other kinds of things that are cancer-causing chemicals made with equipment. So, but that identity card is going to become more and more since everybody's got a cell phone now. We're going to see that, but then we're going to see the cell phone, I think, go on to a chip or some type of chip. And recently, I don't have a video of that today, but it's interesting because they're saying that there is now I can't call it a tattoo, but it ends up being a tattoo under the skin that you will use for your actual cell phone and not a quote unquote RFID chip like we're seeing there. I think the RFID chip is antiquated technology. I think they can do it much better with just things like luciferase, which has a patent on it, right? It has like snake veins, and you put that on as a patch and they can deliver vaccines and other things for it and so forth. But this is an interesting concept. And in this case, this little video I'll share here with 55 seconds is all about that identity card.
Digital transformation is changing the way we manage our data, our information, our interactions, and our identities online. The United Nations is ready to digitally transform how it deals with identity, with a system to streamline information sharing, daily workflows, access to platforms and buildings with a universal system-wide identity solution. Introducing the UN Digital ID. All of your personal, HR, medical, travel, security, payroll and pension data in the palm of your hand, giving you full control on what you share and with whom. With blockchain and biometrics, the UN Digital ID makes verification efficient, secure, transparent, immutable, portable and universal. As innovation transforms the world, we can improve the way we manage our identities online. UN Digital IDs, a building block for digital cooperation, unlocking the promise of the SDGs.
Notice it was unlocking the promise of SDGs, right? So we talked about that already with the UN, but isn't it interesting that she's talking about, this particular video is talking about the actual phone still, but whether it's in the web of the hand or some other method, they'll find more technology, especially through AI, that will allow us to be able to fulfill what the UN is attempting to do, right? So some people in the world have already done it. Now, we talked about local, right? Local school, local city council, different cities. But we also talked about, and we heard Yuval Noah Harari talk about populations being controlled and so forth. This is a short video of the Chinese students and how digital ID works there. So you can see that isn't that interesting? I mean, they can't get any food at the school. They already got scanned coming into the school. Now they're getting scanned for their meal. Of course, they need to pay for it. And so that's the reason why. But what we're seeing is that in some countries overseas, they're totally there now in terms of digital ID and control and compliance. Yesterday, I think it was Albania, not positive, but I think it was Albania, just as an off note here, that they no longer have a human for their leader in the country. They have an avatar now. And the people voted for that, allegedly. And so, we might find that the leaders of our countries end up being non-human, either synthetics or avatars that never have any bodily form. And so it might be easier for the local entities and so forth to just turn to whoever's in leadership and say, that's what they're telling us we have to do. And that's it. No more thought, no more free will, no more voting and choices, right? So very interesting. This here is a welcome to the agenda for Christmas in 2025. This is what the UK government is putting out. And of course, right now, they are really pushing this digital ID there. Innovation and technology. They released a video showcasing their digital identification system set to be rolled out next year. They depict anyone using a physical ID as clumsy, slow, outdated, such a huge problem in society, clown world. So now they might not just be doing it to you because of pain, or you can't access this, or it's not as convenient, or they're, even if there's security, it's a good reason, but they might be doing it because they're making fun of you, right? Or they're embarrassing you, or they're humiliating you.
There's already 50 digital apps like this one. But what it means is that bar staff can scan to prove somebody's identity, and it doesn't give away any personal information. So it means that giving your ID is safer than it's ever been before. Changes like these are going to create economic growth for our country, which is key to our plan for change.
There you are.
Great, thanks. You can put it on the tab. So this means by next Christmas, buying a pint will be a little bit easier.
Right. Yeah, all good. There you go, mate. Cheers. £7.20, please. London prices. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Dane, I think, I mean, you've really defined the problem. I mean, that whole point about continuing this series is so important because we've really, been able to define the issues, and then we need to continue on what we can do about it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to finish up with this last video here. Interesting one from this individual, because again, this is back to the UK. And I want to emphasize to people that are out there listening that the United States is actually not ahead in technology. We see the Elon Musks and the rockets that he's built in Tesla and the Tesla robots and all that, and Peter Thiel and of course Elon Musk were partners with PayPal, all of that kind of thing. So we think we're far ahead. And we might be in terms of the technical pieces, but people overseas have adopted and adapted and embraced a lot of this, even if it's not the people, but the governments themselves, way before we have. And that's been normal since way back, as far as I can think back, even in the 80s when I was in Turkey, we were 30 years ahead of the United States, as I've said many times. So what are they doing now overseas that we are going to see eventually come here? And so some of these things like Aldi's in the UK and the Chinese, I try to give enough expression about different places in the Israeli government with Yuval Noah Harari to help people understand that in reality, they are already implementing overseas. People ask all the time, how come we're not farther ahead technologically? And I say it's because we're capitalists. We argue all the time. Overseas, the government decides it, and then they just implement. Done. But we ourselves are still arguing about all this stuff, and we're fighting back and forth. Unfortunately, we've got Republicans and Democrats that are both pushing for this digital ID now.
Through Companies House, the ways to go about doing that, and the fact that they're trying to push you towards using the government digital app, Digital One. This is insane. You're not going to believe what I'm just about to tell you. So let me just stop this live video here, and then I'm just going to put up a screen behind me so you can read it. Bear with me one sec. Right, you've got to take a look at this because it's absolutely mental. You're not going to believe it. Let me just put my specs on so I can read it to you. Right, so this is an extract from the government's own Digital One website, okay? And this is a guy that's posted this, who's a company director, who was trying to use the site to verify his identity for Companies House as a company director. Look what this says. Thanks for contacting the gov.uk.1 login support team. If you've received a failed identity message and you've not been provided with an alternative way to prove your identity, there are currently no options available for you to prove your identity via the app, and there is no further recourse at this time. We cannot give users more details about why they are unable to confirm their identity or why they do not have further options via gov.1 login. This is to protect users from fraud and to keep their information safe. We are unable to reset or override the verification process, nor can we offer an alternative route at this time. Whilst we are unable to take further action, your feedback regarding this would be valued. So basically what they're saying is, if you try to use this app and for whatever reason you either mess something up or it doesn't recognize your identity, doesn't verify your identity, tough. That's it. You're locked out. You're finished. They've got no further recourse. Their support team can't help you. The app can't help you, and they can't even advise you about what to do next.
Oh, you're on mute, buddy.
Thank you. So isn't that interesting? So just like we've got some other things, they're saying in this case, they can't really help you. You didn't opt in. So therefore you're kind of like the alternate school system, right? Hey, you're not vaccinated? Too bad. We're calling your parents, go home. I'm like, well, when we get to that point, people have to revolt in a very peaceful manner and choose not to go there in the one hand, because they're going to force us. If they force us, and we're not enough of us to stand up, then we won't be able to make a difference. I thought it was really interesting that Glenn Beck and Whitney Webb the other day on the interview, Glenn asked her, how many people at the top do you think there really are worldwide? She said less than 200. And Glenn said, don't you think it's actually closer to 100? And she said, probably. So we've got 100 people worldwide that are controlling billions of people. And if the billions of people stand up and peaceably and quietly revolt, just do not comply, then they can't carry out their mission. They cannot actually carry out what it is they're going to try to force on us to be compliant. So I just want to encourage people out there, get prepared mentally. Sometimes we never noticed anything because it never was brought up to us. Those that are listening to this video and watching the video and listening to the audio on the podcast, I just want to encourage you that you can do something, and it starts with you. And then work on people next to you and your families and others so that we have a team that's bigger than the 100 or 200 that are trying to control the whole world right now. And the truth is coming out with more whistleblowers and other people. We're going to see more and more, I think, truth come out than probably people are still ready for. But I think Trump has done a good job of making sure that people are getting warmed up to what's really happening behind the scenes. Your thoughts, Kurt?
No, we need to continue the discussion without a doubt. I mean, this connects all the dots, quite frankly, and if we can connect the dots and we can be unified in standing up for the right things, I mean, we just need to have people who have ears hear and people that have eyes see, and then we can have a strategy. But if indeed we're in the dark on this, it's hard to have a strategy. So no, I'm all for continuing this.
All
It's
right.
been good.
Well, thanks. Well, in one final thought, keep your eyes on the UK, folks that are listening out there, because since they're further ahead technologically than we are in terms of rolling out technology through their governments, what we see happening over there will eventually attempt to come here in the United States. So be warned and be ready. And we're here every Friday talking about digital IDs, surveillance, lots of other things that impact you and I as citizens here in the United States. And we are the people, and we need to take back the power as we the people, just like our Constitution says, right? Kurt, you want to close us up with prayer?
Father God, we just thank you. Thank you for this time. We know it's so important, and that you want us to be alert and not have misdirected faith into worldly or material things, and you explain that throughout the Old Testament, throughout the New Testament, and help us to chew on those words. Help us to be faithful to you. Help us to be courageous in standing up for what is right, because it's the right thing to do. Thank you for this time with Dane. Help us to get the message out. Help us to continue to shine where the light has not been shining on information that we're not getting from the news on the TV or from the radio or from social media. Help us to be able to help other people. In your son's name we pray this today. Amen.
All right. Well, I want to share that one scripture here at the end that I had in mind, because this has come up over and over this week for whatever reason. But it comes out of Ephesians. It's Ephesians 6:10. And you know it well, Kurt. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. And in addition to all of this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So thank you, Kurt, for being a great teammate and for being on with us today. We'll be back again next Friday, and we'll probably cover another aspect of digital ID. How's that sound?
Let's go for it.
All right. Thanks. God bless, and Trike On, Kurt.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to the Character Driven Life and Leadership Podcast with Coach Dane, training and coaching leaders to grow with character first. Leadership isn't about the titles, it's about trust. And when you lead with character, your people skills and technical skills follow, and your leadership impact multiplies. Subscribe, share, and connect with me here at lmdc.us to keep growing you in leadership and life with character at the foundation. Until next time, love, live, lead, and trike on.